Hello, everyone. This is Fire Chief Paul Dow with Albuquerque Fire Rescue. This podcast is designed to bring you helpful training and best practices and some additional resources that you can access from anywhere. So thank you for joining us and enjoy today's episode.
This is AFR Podcast, and today we're going to be talking about cancer. We've got 4 members of AFR that have had cancer, and they're going to be sharing their stories with us today.
So this is Marco Lopez, driver for AFR. I've been a firefighter now going on 18 years. I was diagnosed with cancer in January of this year, but I found out actually through the grace of God through a employee physical downtown. Went from my annual physical being a hazmat tech, we have to do OSHA yearly physicals, kind of put it off. I actually did put it off twice, and I finally went in November. Did all my testing, and then the doctor came, Dr. Perea. She came in and did my head-to-toe assessment, and while filling on my lymph nodes, she found a nice little lump in the side of my neck, which I had never noticed. I was asymptomatic, had no issues. She started giving me questions, any recent weight loss, trouble sleeping, any night sweats. No, everything's fine. She's like, okay, well, what's this lump on your neck? And I asked her, I don't even know what you're talking about. So felt it, and it was very palpable. She said, just follow up with your primary physician. I saw him, I think the week later. This was right before Thanksgiving, and he wanted to do some tests on it. So they did they did a scan, I think first, and it was inconclusive. And then they wanted to do a biopsy, and they did the biopsy. And so I think after the biopsy was taking place, that was put me in January. And January 13th, I found out that it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I met with my doctor at the time, or the oncologist at the time, and he said that with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and being that I was so asymptomatic, that was something that people have lived with for years. He's like, well, we've had people that live with this for 10, 15, 20 years that never gotten it treated. And that was kind of his recommendation. We weren't going to treat anything. But he wanted to do a PET scan. So I did a PET scan, I think in January, February. And they found a lump on the left side of my thigh, on the left side of my leg. And that was a large B-cell lymphoma. So just because of the fact that it had spread and this was large B cell is a lot more aggressive than the one that I had in my neck. So that bought me chemotherapy. He said, that's something we can't ignore. We have to treat it. So started chemotherapy, I think March 9th was my first one. He said, we'll do 6 rounds of chemotherapy, which included 5 different drugs. And that was once every 3 weeks. So went through it. After the 4th round of chemotherapy, we did another PET scan to see how things were and where I stood. And, thank God that he said that there was no more active cancer cells. So we were able to cut down the chemotherapy from the 5 drugs down to just 1 drug, which is rituximab. And for the last 2 rounds of chemotherapy, I just got that 1 drug, and no side effects, no issues, no problems with it. Went actually perfectly fine. Met with my doctor. He said, going forward, we can do preventative chemotherapy, which we will do for the next 2 years, or we cannot do anything at all. And if it comes back, that's the problem with this type of cancer, is there high incidence of remission or coming back. So I just decided to do the preventative chemotherapy. So I'll be doing that for the next 2 years. So I'll go once every 3 months and getting that rituximab. But I can say that I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed. I count my stars every day just by the simple fact that the doctor found it. I felt fine. I felt great. The lymph node itself at points when she first pointed it out, it was huge. You couldn't miss it. And then before I went to go see my doctor, it actually had decreased in size. So I think that the stars aligned and she was able to find it and kind of send me that way. And it's hard not to think about, what if I hadn't have gone, and just stayed my course and possibly could have spread, or all these what ifs, but she found it. I treated it. I feel good. I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate.
Hi there. My name is Laureana Sargent. I'm a lieutenant with Albuquerque Fire Rescue. I'm currently working in the heart program. I was diagnosed with breast cancer January 24th of this year, which is 2020. I had postponed and just kind of put off getting a mammogram. I was probably close to a year overdue, and I urge everybody who has a wife or a female in their life to please remind them to go get that done. I went in for a regular annual exam with my OBGYN, and she found a lump in my breast. And I think I had felt it there, but in my mind it felt like it was more muscular because it was off to the side, so I didn't think much of it. So that led to a diagnostic ultrasound, which showed a tumor, and that led to a biopsy, which confirmed that I had triple negative basal cell breast cancer. The tumor was about 1.5 inches in size, and I immediately had already put the wheels in motion to see a surgeon. And when I saw her, she said that a lumpectomy is what would be the best course of action for that, and probably radiation. So that was scheduled, and on February 18th, I had a lumpectomy, and all that went well. The doctor said that everything on the peripheral ends of the tumor were negative for cancer. But she had sent me over to New Mexico Cancer Center to speak to an oncologist and to a radiological specialist. So the oncologist said that because of the type of cancer, chemo was definitely needed. It's an aggressive cancer. It's fast growing, and there could be cells throughout somewhere else in my body or even in my breast that were in different stages of growing that couldn't be detected. So that's why the chemotherapy was needed. So I started chemotherapy on March 19th, and I'm still undergoing chemotherapy. I have 3 more rounds. I've had 16, it'll be 16 total, which hasn't, as anybody who's been through chemotherapy, hasn't been easy, but it's close to being done. And after chemotherapy, I'll have radiation also, and I'll have 22 treatments of radiation before I'm completely done with all my treatment, and a follow-up with a mammogram, and we'll go from there. But I'm pretty confident that that will be the end of this experience, and the cancer will be taken care of.
Hi, my name is Mark Hakas. I'm a lieutenant from Albuquerque Fire Rescue for the past 12 years I've been in. I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer on 11 November 2016. Did not know that I was dealing with the cancer at that time. My symptoms were I had low energy. Found out through my doctor I was anemic for a while, and then constantly using the restroom. I was using the restroom about 10 to 15 times a day for a while now. My wife was telling me probably for like 2 months I was constantly using the restroom like 10 to 15 times a day. So went to my primary. He diagnosed me having anemia. He did all the tests. We did all the tests. Did not understand why I was still going to the restroom. And finally he sent me to get a colonoscopy. After my colonoscopy, the doctor right away just stopped going, where you're supposed to go. And as soon as I woke up, he just told me that I have cancer. The funny thing about it is, like I told him, was it curable? He said yes, and I just started laughing. I was still high on drugs. But during that whole time, I finally saw my first doctor that I seen was the surgeon. He told me that is the exact locations of where they have an idea where the cancer was at. So he told me that I had to do radiation first, because in the study of Europe, they did a few studies over there saying that the radiation will decrease or actually kill the cancer. So I did my radiation first. I had 27 treatments. Then after that, I had my surgery. The surgery was not good because I ended up having a thing called an ileostomy bag. That bag is like a colostomy bag, but this surgery was reversible. Do not recommend it, but it was a pain in the butt. Excuse my language, but it was. I dealt with that with so much. I don't know how my wife lived. Well, that was helping me out, lived through just dealing with me. And at the same time, I was taking chemo treatments. After seeing my oncologist, he was telling me I need to do 9 treatments of chemo, and they went very aggressive on me. So dealing with the ileostomy bag and the chemo treatment, it really bore me down. Days like this outside at 95-degree weather, I will go outside for like 5 to 10 minutes. I will come back and I'll be asleep for like 3-4 hours. It really took a toll on me. During that time, losing a whole bunch of weight, switching out bags. There's days where I'll be switching out 3 to 4 bags because I was losing so much weight, and it took a toll on my wife as well. But throughout the whole process, I finally finished the chemo. Waited a couple of more months so I could have the reversible surgery. But during that whole time, I got to say, everybody in the fire department helped me out extremely. Started off with people who were helping me out with radiation. You know, my counterpart over there, Lorena Sergeant, she worked for me a few times, helping me out. The guys at 17s, when I was there, they were helping me out so much. And just throughout the whole process, guys working trades for me and everything else. The whole cancer thing, the way I felt went really bad, especially with chemo. Did not feel good at all. And now dealing with this right now, after 5 years, I still dealing with some neuropathy with my hands and my feet, and I'm not liking that at all because it ruins my day-to-day activity sometimes. But I am glad that I don't have to deal with the cancer anymore. I get to see my doctor one more time this month, and after that, one more time, 1 more year, and then I'll be done. Hopefully remissed after that.
Hello, my name is David Retinger. I'm a driver with Albuquerque Fire Rescue, currently serving in the Public Affairs Office. So, my story is about, it was on Christmas Day of 2017. I had been having abdominal pain for a couple of days prior, and I went to a urgent care, thinking it was probably an ulcer, something like that. We did an x-ray and it was not showing anything, so I set up a GI appointment for a couple weeks later and went home, and it just wasn't going away. It was so uncomfortable I couldn't sleep. But so I went ahead and took a visit to the ER, and we did a ultrasound and just kind of assessed me, and they were not finding anything, so they thought probably was something GI related. Went back home, and it was already probably 3 o'clock in the morning at the time, and I had to work the next day for Christmas Day. So I went to work, and probably lasted till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and pain just wasn't going away. It was kind of hard to focus at work, so I called off and went to Presbyterian downtown ER. And at that time, a friend of mine, Dr. Ian Maduro, who was also the medical director for Albuquerque Ambulance, was on shift. So he had ordered a CT scan. It was kind of the next step. That's when it revealed there was a couple smaller tumors, about 2 centimeters, on my pancreas. And I was in a lot of pain still, so I had gotten my first my first fentanyl dose, and I immediately fell asleep, took a nap. They decided to admit me for pain control for the next 5 days. I was getting fentanyl every 3 hours. And then that 6th day, it just stopped. Like, I just wasn't having the pain anymore. During those 6 days, it was really concerning because 96% of people that present with pancreatic tumors have what's known as adenocarcinoma, and that can be very deadly, often 6 months to a year by the time they find it. So for a few days, we were waiting on a biopsy, pretty much thinking that, I had just a small amount of time left. It was pretty tough. They thought they noticed something on an old scan from 2009. In hindsight, thinking we think the cancer may have started back then. It's hard to say, but that was good news, believe it or not, because there's another cancer, which is what I was ultimately diagnosed with, known as pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, or PNET. And the reason that's good is it's slower growing typically. Yeah, ultimately, we ended up getting that diagnosis. So believe it or not, I was very happy. I said, I'll take the 5 or 6 year cancer. At the time, that was kind of the life expectancy, was 5 to 7 years on average, versus 6 months to a year. So, and ever since then, it's just been kind of a roller coaster, just learning more about the disease, navigating through the right doctors. Currently, I'm with a specialist who only treats neuroendocrine cancer, and he's in Denver. His name's Dr. Eric Liu. And of the 6 surgeons I've met with, he's the only one that wants to not do surgery at the moment, because I still got the same tumor burden. We had learned that it metastasized to a couple lymph nodes, and I've got about 20 small tumors in my liver, which sounded bad. And I had a part of my liver shrunk. They thought I had a surgery, a resection, and I didn't. Despite all of that, he feels very confident that, this is still pretty manageable for him. So the good news is I don't have any symptoms of my tumors, really. I don't make enough digestive juices. That's one of the functions of your pancreas. Mine's a little shriveled up, but my sugars are good. And so I'm on a monthly injection called lanreotide. It's a somatostatin hormone analog, and it's a $16,000 shot. I've been doing for almost 2 years now, every month, and it's known to slow these tumors down, at least for a few years. And I expect a little growth, but I've been very blessed, because I've had no growth in the 2 years that I've been getting monitored. Hopefully, I can be one of these patients. I've met patients that have been fighting this for 20 years. I mean, there's always people that come up. There was a gentleman, I was going to get his name. His name's Donnell Lim Mighty. He was a CSU coach. He just passed away a couple of days ago, but he was about a year older than me, 40. He's 47. Same diagnosis, but different outcomes. Steve Jobs was probably one of the most famous people who had pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer. And he died 7 years later. So, initially I was really bummed out. I was like, if this billionaire, can't survive longer than 7 years, then what is a firefighter's chance of surviving? But like I said, I've met a lot of people on the other side of that, where I feel like you're almost back in the same boat before you had cancer. You just don't know what tomorrow has, and hopefully I have a long time. So if you're going to have this cancer, I guess I would say that I have one of the best outcomes so far. And, I'm still working out, like to lift heavy weights, and I'm going to continue to do that as long as I can. So, yeah, that's it.
All right, so I'm sure all of you have done quite a lot of research about your specific type of cancer, but just as in general for, everybody in AFR, what are some general cancer terms that might help us out dealing with patients, or just so we understand if we're talking to somebody who's had cancer?
So in the simplest terms of what I understand about cancer is a mutation essentially of your cell. So our cells, think back to your old school high school biology. They grow, they split, and eventually they die. With cancer cells, there is markers and DNA and kind of stopgaps that cancer does not adhere to. And so you just have these cancer cells that don't follow a cell cycle, and they just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, and there's nothing that stops them. Eventually with cancer cells, as they become too much for our immune system to combat, I think as Lieutenant Hakas says, sometimes your immune system doesn't recognize essentially what is a foreign body in your system. So that's the problem with cancer cells, is that there's the problem for them to just keep growing and unchecked. And when you have these cells grow unchecked, that's where they have the chance to spread into other parts of the system and to adhere to major organs and to infect your lungs and metastasize to your brain. And essentially you just have these lumps of cells pretty much causing havoc in your body. The staging for cancer, it gets very, very specific to the cancer that you have. But for in general terms, people are pretty versed in stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's just a matter of the spread of the cancer cells. So if you have stage 1, it's pretty localized. I had stage 1 cancer initially with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because they found it in my neck. So they classified that as stage 1. As it spreads out to further parts of your body, that's when they go into stage 2, 3, and 4. So for my instance is because I had it in my neck, but then it also had metastasized to my thigh, that automatically made me a stage 4. That's not a death sentence. It's just a matter of defining what kind of cancer you have. So it's just a matter of in your body, is it localized? Is it just in this one spot? Like Lieutenant Sergeant here, is it just in her breast, or it's in her breast and it's also spread to her lung? Those are the kind of the stagings that were there. And like I said, there's much more complex stagings to it, but we won't get into that. The very minimum is, you talk to someone stage 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's kind of just where it is in their body. But again, with cancer, from what it was 15, 20 years ago, it's not a death sentence. You respond to a patient and they tell you they have stage 4 liver cancer. That's not, they could have had that for 5, 10, 15 years. It's just a matter of where it is in their body.
And as Marco said, there's the different stages and the different types. And because there's different types of cancer cells, that's why there's different treatments. That's why everybody doesn't get the same chemotherapy. That is why not everybody gets radiation. Some people get chemotherapy before they have surgery to remove a tumor, to shrink that. Some people, it goes the other direction. Just within breast cancer alone, I've discovered, 6, 7 different types. In my own family, my mom had breast cancer in her 70s. She had a different type. My aunt had breast cancer in her 80s, which was her sister, who had a different type. My cousin right now had it. She was diagnosed a month after me at the age of 86 and had a different type. And so that, just because you have cancer doesn't mean that everybody's going to be treated in the same manner.
So talking about chemo, with my particular case, chemotherapy is often used to treat neuroendocrine cancers, depending on the grade. So we talked about the stages of cancer, but there's also grades of cancer. We're referring to the rate of growth. With my particular biopsy, it was shown to have a grade 1, which is very slow growing. So that was good. It's different doctors have different treatment plans. Surprisingly, it's not always going to be the same. So unfortunately, I had met with some different doctors, and they prescribed a chemo for, I think, about 6 months. It was an oral chemo. And in hindsight, I've learned that for my particular grade, that it's never shown to benefit patients. But there are individuals with neuroendocrine cancer who have been on chemo indefinitely for years, 2, 3 years, probably more. And so we learned about how different people tolerate it. We had some discussions with people that were on the same drugs, and some people have no problems with that drug, and other people have every adverse reaction you can think of. So for me, it was mostly nausea, and there was a second component to my treatment that was a little more of I would say more of a hardcore drug I took for 4 days stacked on top of my 10 days of the first treatment. And that one was definitely tough. The first month that I'd done it, the antiemetics that I was prescribed didn't do anything. So I was on my way to work, and I woke up very nauseous. I started vomiting. I pulled over, went to one of our fire stations. I was throwing up as soon as bile would collect in my stomach. I tried to get some medication to help, but it ultimately didn't. I had to go back to my doctor's office and get an injection of an antiemetic that was very effective. So that was a terrible experience, but from then on, it was pretty much just nausea and fatigue. And ultimately, we didn't have any changes in my cancer. And when we did finally see specialists, they never gave me that again. So I was pretty happy. But I just remember the feeling in your body is just, this is not good for me, and your body just rejects it most of the time, and you just kind of you're very worried about what it's going to do to you 10 years later, because sometimes they do cause other types of cancer, and you just weigh the pros and cons of whether you really need this drug to treat you currently. So hopefully I won't have to do that again, but like I said, with mine, it's going to be a marathon, and I intend on doing several different treatments over the next several years. So hopefully it won't be anytime soon, though.
So for me, the side effects, I've been on 4 different chemo drugs. The first was a combination, and they supposedly were the harshest ones. One of them was called the Red Devil. That was like the nickname for it because it was red. The nurse had to push it, and IV push or into my port. And my pee was red for, 3 days, whatever. It took a while to go through my system. I keep relating, like in the beginning especially, I kept relating the feeling of chemo and what I felt like as to being hungover, like being extremely hungover. My nausea, though, wasn't as bad. And in my head, my preconception of side effects was vomiting all the time. When my mom went through chemotherapy, which was in 2001, I think, that's kind of what she went through. And I don't know what drug she went through, and I'm sure things have advanced since then. The drugs that they give you to counteract the side effects seemed to work really well for me as far as the nausea stuff. I had severe headaches, which wasn't like at the top of the list for side effects from the chemo, that combination of chemo. But for the first week, I just felt shitty. I just felt tired, and I felt like I was hungover. And the chemo brain fog is a real thing. There's so many things that, like when people tell me we did this 2 weeks ago or we talked 2 weeks ago, I feel like it was a month ago. I feel like since March 19th, it's been 4 years that I've been doing chemo. A lot of it's a fog. I do remember things. It's kind of like, and I relate it to being drunk too. There's a lot of like the alcohol component in this. You remember what you're doing, or you think what you're doing at the time, but then when you look back at it, you're like, holy shit, why did I do that? Or so it's hard. It's a hard thing to explain. Other than that's the only thing I can relate it to. The other side effects that I did not know about was I wake up completely drenched. Like my clothes are drenched, my sheets are drenched, and that will happen. One night it happened to me 3 times within a 2.5 hour time frame. I don't know if this is just for women. I don't know if it's just something that women go through, but my doctor explained it as my hormonal system is fighting against the chemo also. Like it's every system in your body is going, what the heck is going on? And kind of rebelling against it. I lost my hair on my head. I didn't lose my eyelashes or my eyebrows. There was a time that my skin just sloughed off, and I don't have fingerprints now because my phone won't react to my to my thumbprint. That I didn't expect. The fatigue, like all of a sudden it'll hit me. So the second drug I started taking, it's called Taxol. It's supposed to be an easier drug with just some body aches. For me, the body aches hit me like severe, like really, really severe. And it felt like I had the flu times 10. It was just really bad. They switched me, and I had shortness of breath, which was not, once again, like the headaches on the other drug. It wasn't like not on the list, but it wasn't high on the list as being a side effect. So my doctor was really concerned about the shortness of breath. Even sent me for a chest x-ray, and because of that she switched the drug to like the new improved version of Taxol, of the same drug. And since then the side effects, the edge has been taken off, and the shortness of breath has pretty much went away, which is really nice, because I would be sitting down and have shortness of breath, which is, if you've never had it before, which most of us haven't because we're healthy, firefighters, it's a strange thing. So those are kind of the unexpected side effects that I've had that were uncommon, which, like Dave said, everybody responds to these drugs differently. And even from week to week, my body responded differently. So it's just not put in a box and this is what you get kind of thing, for sure.
So my treatments and my side effects were a lot as well. I have a list here so I won't forget because, during this chemo, even after having chemo, I sometimes forget a lot of things. When I started off after my second or third treatment, I started getting the black hands, black feet, which I was made fun of a lot. Also, cold. I could not deal with the cold. When I was going through my chemotherapy, I was in the middle of the summertime, just like this, was this kind of temperature, and I was always walking around with a sweatshirt or always with gloves. I was constantly cold, especially when I was working with RMS. They had the AC going on in there, and I had a heater underneath the table just so I could keep my feet warm. Could not drink anything. Everything always had to be room temperature, nothing else. Every time I take something like mild cold, I'll drink it. I'll feel like needles going down my throat. It wasn't really good at that point. When I was wearing my bag, because losing so much weight, just for it to stick on there, we had to expand or push or separate the wound where it's at, and trying to put the bag on there was the sticker or whatever, the adhesive that we use. But there was times when, like I said, I used 2 or 3, sometimes 4 bags a day for a while because of the weight loss. And it was constantly, it hurt sometimes when my wife would have to put the stuff just for it to adhere to my body. It will sting a lot of that portion where they cut open, and there was times where I was literally crying because it really hurt. That's one of the things that I didn't really like. Forgetfulness, like Lieutenant Sergeant over here was saying, I constantly forget. My wife was telling me that I'll have a conversation with her for about 3 or 4 times of one thing, and I will completely forget every single time. So now I just tell her, I'm sorry, baby, it was the chemo. I forgot. What'd you say? Anyway, I could not sleep. They gave me medications for me to go to bed, but I could not sleep for anything. I was watching movies all night long. Could not eat because it felt like metal in my mouth every time. You'll get some good food. My wife will cook some good food. Smells really good, but as soon as you take a bite, it was not good. It tasted like metal. So basically the whole time I was the bag. Because of the bag, I was eating constantly salty foods, like high doses of salty foods. Tired a majority of the time. I was one of the 11 people that my surgeon said that I would lose my hair. So I lost my hair, I lost my eyebrows, my eyelashes, and people like a certain driver at Station 17 is like, hey, nice eyelashes. I didn't have any at that time. But now after the effects, after going through the chemo, yes, I still have my neuropathy, and trying to work out constantly and everything, it just puts my body, it just tires out, and I'm always constantly sore. So it's I want to go work out. I see these guys over there at the academy, they're working out. I want to be there working out with them, but I can't do the things that they do. And it just constantly sore, and I get tired, just constantly tired. And that's about it.
Me, myself, just like Lieutenant Sergeant, just fatigue, nausea. And like she said, I think the perfect example is just being hungover. And that's how I felt. I felt hungover to the point where water tasted gross, and I couldn't even drink water. Tried Gatorade or anything else just to try to get try to stay hydrated, but everything tasted gross. The good thing with mine, as opposed to I think my friends here, is that I went once every 3 weeks, so my symptoms lasted about a week and a half, and I think that was part of the problem too. I did kind of unexpected, is I was always so sure by the following Wednesday I was going to be good. The following Wednesday I was going to be good. Following Wednesday I'd be good. And I think my third cycle, Wednesday, I still felt crappy. And I think that's where it took the mental toll on me, because I was ready to feel good on Wednesday, and I didn't feel good on Wednesday. And I didn't feel good on Thursday, and I didn't feel good on Friday. And I think that's why I had a little bit of my pity party. And that's, I think, things you're not prepared for. I'm just hey, they can tell you you're going to have nausea, you're going to have vomiting, you might have neuropathy, you might not be able to sleep, you might might not be able to sleep, and that's to be expected. And they give you the drugs and they say, hey, if you are nauseous, take this, take this, take this. If you can't sleep, take this, take this. They're pretty keen to the symptoms, and they give you all the stuff you need to combat it. But I think at the same time, the mental aspect of it, I think, got to me on the third round, and that one was my toughest, and not so much just because of the symptoms, because I've already dealt with them, but they just lasted longer than I wanted them to, and I think I had set myself up for failure, and that was the crappy part of this chemo.
I think too, Marco, that I've discovered after having done it for so long that it builds up in your system, and that's why it lasts longer. It just doesn't go away. And that's what happened with me also with the first combination of drugs was like, I would feel generally good after a week, and then it lasted 10 days, and then it lasted 2 weeks, and yeah, that's when I think that's when I found also too that it mentally and emotionally hit me a little bit harder. This isn't going to get better. This isn't what I expected.
Yeah, you guys are right. At my point, at my 7th treatment, I was like already going to go in there, and I'm just like, this is my last treatment. I'm done. This is it. I cannot do it anymore. And luckily for the nurses that were there, they just saw my face like right away. I didn't not even said a single word, and every single one of the nurses that were there, they just came over and just started talking to me, not mentioning that I looked like I wanted to quit. But after my 4 hours of the treatment, they all just like boosted me. They kind of like, you got 2 more, just take 2 more, keep on going. But like they were saying, mentally, it took a toll on me, a big toll on me.
It's funny how much I think back to the academy and how I kept telling myself going through that this is temporary. Mm-hmm. This is temporary. This is temporary. And the closer you get to the end, like, you're saying when you had 2 treatments, when I hit 4 treatments, when I had 7 treatments left, I was like, I don't know if I could do this. But when I hit 4, I was like, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. At the end of this month, I'm going to be done. So that was the thing that just kept going through my head is this is temporary. This is temporary. This is not going to last forever.
Okay, Mark, so it sounds like you're the only one who's been through radiation. Could you describe that process for everybody? Just how long does it take? What's involved with it?
Okay, so when the surgeon told me that I needed radiation first because of the study, I don't know about them, but they did the study in Europe. They said they do radiation first to shrink the cancer cell or possibly kill it. So that's what I did. So he gave me 27 radiations that I needed to take. And that was every day, Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, nobody's working there, but it was every day, Monday through Friday. I could not skip. The process was I had to go over there. And what they do is the location of where your cancer is at, they kind of like map it out. And they put these stickers in where I needed to go. In my location, it was actually my rear end. So I had about 3 or 4 stickers that they put in back of me. And they put me into a machine, kind of like an MRI. So I had to lay on my belly, put me to the machine, and what the radiation did, it only took like 30 seconds to 45 seconds of just radiation, each dose, and it just targets that specific area. And that was it. So I ended up taking 27 treatments, and that was just a specific area that they were targeting in that location. And I felt fine until my last treatment when I just finally felt tired. That was it. I just felt tired on just my last treatment, and I was working I went back to work that day, and I just literally called Chief Kim and said, hey, I just feel tired. So he was able to just get me removed, and that was my last day that I worked.
Okay, so I mentioned off the top that firefighters have a 9% chance higher of getting cancer and a 14% higher chance of dying from cancer. And this information was gathered during a NIOSH study. In 2007, it studied San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia, and it did show a correlation between, the more time spent at a fire scene, being exposed to those hazards led to an increase in cancer. So then there were some other studies done. 2014, there's a study known as the Nordic study, and 2006, called the Lemasters meta-analysis. So all three of these studies are showing a correlation between the profession of firefighting and an increase in getting cancer. Now, with all that, the state of New Mexico has a presumptive cause law that went into effect, and that's just saying that, if you get cancer, it's presumed that you got it because of being a firefighter. But I guess there's a lot more details that I'll have you guys discuss now that I wasn't aware of prior to this.
So with my particular cancer, with breast cancer, stipulation in the law states that I would have to be employed by a state agent or an agency in the state of New Mexico for 5 years, and I would have to be the age of 40 or younger. I'm older than the age of 40, so that didn't cover me, even though I have worked in the state of New Mexico as a firefighter for 21 years, one at one agency, which is a federal agency, and 12 years with the state, with the city. The strange thing is that, or the ironic thing is that women typically don't get sent to get mammograms until they're 40 years old. At the age of 40, that's when they typically start doing them annually or biannually. So I was excluded from being able to be covered by the state or workman's comp. And I guess 3 out of 4 of us in this room were in the same position. Right, Dave?
That's correct. With my case, it's such a rare cancer. I knew it'd be tough to putting the burden of proof on the employees. You really have to show some good evidence of that. So for me, it was a little more difficult, and I really wasn't sure. I was talking to a couple of my physicians as to whether or not this could be exposure, and they really don't know what caused it. It wasn't a yes or a no. They just don't know. So mine is pretty rare, so it doesn't really come up as one of the top 10 cancers that we're seeing that are more prevalent with exposures. I wasn't covered for that.
For me, it was just I wasn't in the department long enough. For them to pay the workman's comp and everything, I had to be in for 10 years. I was in 9 years. And my previous years didn't count as well. So if I was in for 10, they would have taken care of me. And there was no cutoff age or anything for Lieutenant Sergeant over here. But it was just that was it.
And for me, as they mentioned in the group, I was very fortunate that I was actually covered. And that was just because of the length of service that I have. I have about to start 18 years. So for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, you have to have more than 15 years in the fire service. So I was very fortunate that obviously I had that, but at the same time, it kind of just, and listening to Lorena and Hakas and Mr. Ranger is just if I had 14 years, I wouldn't have been covered, but I have 15 years, I am covered. So it seems kind of arbitrary. I know it kind of leads into, do you want to cover them? But it just, you could get cancer at 10 years, you can get cancer at 9 years, you can get cancer at a year on the job, but we're not going to cover until you have 15 years. And everything that I've tried to do in research, I haven't found anything that says why 15 years. I don't understand that part.
All right, I'd like to hear what you guys think, but from my point of view, I think our department's done a excellent job of trying to be proactive and just taking all the measures that are recognized nationally as great prevention efforts. So to start with, we're moving towards a clean cab apparatus. We've got the interstitial spaces. They've gone through all the stations and made sure we've got those 2 doors separating the living area and the bay. We've got the diesel exhaust filters. No bunkers in the living areas. We've got washing machines installed recently. Baby wipes. They've made a good point to educate us on wiping down your neck because you can get the carcinogens coming through your flash hood. Setting up decon at a fire. They'll swap out our bunkers when they get dirty and wash them for us. They'll swap out your flash hood. We do annual physicals to include VO2 max, and some of the other things that have been in place for a while are, having a safety monitor the air quality. So they're letting you know if it's above 35 parts per million of CO, and in that case, then you need to have your SCBA on. Although that one's a little bit more controversial because these carcinogens can still be present. It's not the best way to measure if there's carcinogens present. So that's debatable, but it is a a measure we have in place. And then, just having the SCBAs, we all have them, but I think we need to do a better job of using them, at all times. I haven't seen anybody ever make entry into a structure that isn't on air, but that's kind of right at the threshold. I've seen people ventilating, busting out a window and sucking in some smoke if they're outside, or trying to ventilate off a ladder when they're outside. Just the other day, we were on a fire just off of Broadway, and we were breathing in smoke for a little bit, because we're trying to do all this work outside. It was defensive fire. And we just need to recognize that, if there's smoke, that's got carcinogens in it, and we need to go ahead and go on air at that time. So those are some of the things that I think we can improve on. I don't know if you guys had any ideas of what you think we can get better at. We are, admin wise, they're making a lot of efforts, but what do you think about like culture wise that we need to work on?
I think just like you said, you're outside. I was just thinking when you gave that example that on every car fire, you have your SCBA on because of what is burning in the car. And if we just keep that in mind, just because you're outside doesn't mean that you shouldn't. If there's smoke, you should have it on, period. Because you don't know when the direction of wind is going to change, and all that smoke is going to be on top of you.
Yeah, and I think it's like we talked about. It was always a badge of honor to have the helmet with the most melted visor and the bunkers. I've gotten teased because I started on the rescue pretty early on in my career, so I've always had the cleanest bunkers because rescue drivers didn't get real dirty. So I, to almost try harder to get them dirty, and have that black on there. One thing that I'm curious about is I know we've eliminated bringing bunker gear into the stations, but I don't know. You guys tell me if we still have guys on calls, that are still going into the houses with their bunker gear on. It's really no difference, and it's even worse because now, if you kneel down to assess a patient, if you're rubbing anything off under the carpet, their baby crawls on the next day, or, all those things are things to think about. One thing I try to tell people is, and I don't know if I'm going to speak just for myself, but it's probably similar with you guys, but, the first time you hear that you have cancer, one of my first thoughts was, oh my God, what did I do in my life that has led up to this, to cause this cancer? And, the things we do in our job, outside of our job, a lot of it's very dangerous, but over long term. So you don't really see those effects in the short term. And so we really want to get better about, especially younger guys. I mean, if you do ever have something like this happen to you, at least you can say, well, hopefully it wasn't because of my fire career, because I did all those things to eliminate exposures and getting cancer. Where a lot of us can't say that because we didn't really grow up in that era. But things are changing now for the better. It's really exciting to see how hard the administration and our union, nationwide even, has gone to bring this issue to the forefront.
One of the things, like Lieutenant Sergeant was talking about, we do still have to take care of our drivers. We really do. They are really exposed to everything, especially the ones that are right in the front, the first-in truck. We really do have to take care of those guys because they're still sucking in a lot of that smoke. We got to find a way to take care of those guys because I don't want them to be here like we are right now.
I think as far as taking care of them, I don't want to say this in a harsh way, but I think it's everybody's individual responsibility. And as long as we can recognize as a culture that it's okay for a driver to put an SCBA on and not give them a hard time about it, because they're out there and they're exposed. And like I said, at any point, any of us can be in a position where the wind's going to shift and all that smoke is all of a sudden on top of us, whether you're ventilating or whether you're running a pump. But it comes down to, I think, our individual responsibility to take the initiative to at least have it readily available, and for us as a culture and other members of the department to not look down upon that.
I think it's good. I think our admin it's reteaching and retooling. And I think I relate this to, my other careers as a nurse in firefighting. it's an evolving process, and you learn something. What are we going to learn today that we didn't know yesterday that we can apply for tomorrow? I was very fortunate enough where I came in, 17 years ago. I used to sleep with my bunker gear next to the bed because that was just what we did, just so you could get to the truck faster, so you could be more aware faster. And we had bunker gear second days where we just would wear our bunker gear essentially all day the second day, whether we were in the TV room or whether we were in the bathroom, we just had our bunker gear. So fast forward, 17 years, and we don't do that stuff anymore. And it just takes a change in culture. It takes, people like us who have, the negative aspect of it, of getting cancer because of these things and being exposed to these carcinogens. Now you go into a station, you see the posters, telling people about it. It's reteaching and retooling. And what do we learn today, that we did yesterday? We can adapt and we can change. And I think our department's very proactive on that. I think we're doing great things, but there's still obviously a lot more to be done.
It has to do a lot too. When we started doing the post decon, I hear a lot of the guys say, well, we really weren't exposed. We got a little bit of smoke on us. Why do we have to get decon? Just do it. Just to protect yourself. That's my thing. Just do it. Just protect yourself. And since this COVID thing that's been happening, I noticed that a lot of the stations, a lot of the guys have like a bucket with bleach, and they step on it before they even come in. Obviously, no bunkers in. And I know one station's actually not letting the guys come in with their boots after the emergency. They change out into their tennis shoes, which is kind of good, not just because of the COVID, but actually we could do that just for ourselves, to continue on.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming on. I know this is a sensitive topic, and it's probably hard for you guys to talk about yourself like this. And sometimes, from an outsider, it's hard for me sometimes to know what to say to somebody with cancer too. So again, thanks for coming on. And do you have any closing thoughts, takeaways for people?
I think that what is being provided for us in our department right now by administration and by the union, as far as all the ways that we can prevent getting cancer, we need to capitalize on those, and we need to utilize them. They're there for a reason, and there's 4 reasons sitting in this room right now. So I think we all can probably do a better job at making sure that we follow through with those things. And I think that the other thing is that we need to listen to our bodies more, and we need to make sure that if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right. And go get checked up. Go get checked out, follow up with your doctor. And as far as like in my case, make sure you do your scheduled exams as far as mammograms or whatever it might be. Because if things are caught early, they can be treated. If they're not caught early, then all of us might not be sitting here right now. So that's kind of what I would like to convey to everybody out there.